Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Zabasajja, an anchor and reporter at Bloomberg Quick Take and Bloomberg News here in New York. Thank you so much for joining us and continuing this conversation about HBCUs and the path to prosperity. As we know, charitable giving to higher education institutions is not created equal, but it can, and it will take a lot of work. And I'm really fortunate to be joined by these two individuals who have put in a lot of the work and have helped sort of kickstart what we're hoping is the future of charitable giving and contributions to HBCU. So I want to bring in Martha Karsh. She is the founder of the Karsh Family Foundation, and also Charles Phillips, managing partner and co-founder of Recognize. Thank you both so much for being here. Charles, I want to just start with you. I want to talk about what were some of the gaps that you were noticing in charitable giving to HBCUs, and how did that influence your approach to giving back to these institutions?
Yeah, well, it started for me. I went to business school at Hampton University and have seen it, up close. My father went there as well, and the recurring theme was the number of people dropping out of an HBCUs because they simply did not have enough financial aid to get through. Their parents tended not to have the same wealth and intergenerational wealth as other schools, perhaps, and so they're more likely to borrow most of what they need for college. And so it was just painful to watch that over and over again. People with aptitude, with motivation, but after 2 years, the family runs out of money, and then the worst thing happens: they leave, but they have 2 years worth of college debt with no job. And so that cycle I saw many, many years, and so we tried to intercede and see if we could do something different. Fortunately, now a lot of people recognize it. Given post George Floyd, people want to help. And I guess the thing is to channel it into that one issue. I mean, there are other issues as well, but just basic scholarship and money to get through college, that's still a big issue. A lot of people drop out simply for financial aid.
And so how did that then influence your approach to giving back?
Yeah, well, I personally also am friends with both the presidents of Morehouse and Spelman, so that was easy for me to do. They find me when they need me, and so I endowed a chair there at Spelman already. That's just me personally, but there were other things I wanted to do beyond my own personal giving, and one of the things was when people do graduate from one of these colleges, can they get connected to employers? And they need to get connected earlier so they know what their choices are. You don't know what to major in or what industries are possible if no one's shown you that. And so we had this sequence where people would graduate in disciplines that did not lead to economic prosperity. A lot of studies, sociology, theology. If you want to do that, that's fine, but to recognize the impact of what that's going to have on earnings power down the road. If you don't know about chemical industries or many other industries, you don't think of that. And so what we've been doing is getting the companies engaged earlier, and also encouraging entrepreneurship while they're still in school, so they understand how it works, what their options are, and then they can make an informed decision by the time they graduate.
And Martha, I want to bring you in here. You have 20 years of philanthropic. You've been giving for 20 years. Talk to us about how your giving over the past 20 years really led you back in 2020, beginning of 2020, to provide Howard with the biggest endowment that they had ever received. What led you to the school?
So you're right, we've been at this for 20 years, and probably maybe unlike Charles, I came to this area a little bit more organically. When my husband and I started our family foundation in 1998, we decided the focus would be education. And at the time, it was a fairly simple vision. We thought education is one of the greatest levers, maybe the greatest levers in philanthropy for making a difference. You give kids an opportunity for a great education. It changes their life. It changes the life of their families. It changes the life of communities. So settled on that, and then we focused on what were the great organizations and institutions we could support. And early on, more than 20 years ago, we discovered in the K-12 area, Teach for America and KIPP, which is one of the really the largest and best public charter schools across the country now. And at higher education, so that was our K-12 bucket. At higher education, we we're just looking at universities that really understood financial aid. They understood that there were a lot of talented kids out there who lacked only resources. So that was our early focus. And along the way, what we discovered is that what really influences your philanthropic direction and decisions are the people you meet. So early on, we met Wendy Kopp, who was a visionary at Teach for America, Richard Barth, who along with Don Fisher were early developers of the KIP program when it was in its infancy. We met Dick Broadhead at Duke University, Amy Gutman at Penn, and a whole host of others. And along the way, those people made it very clear to us that you find great institutions, great organizations, you find them run by incredibly talented, visionary people, you give them the money and get out of the way. And that was just a very successful formula, because if you're at the right place with the right people, all kinds of good things happen. So along the way, in a panel really not unlike this, it was at a KIP school summit, I was the moderator, and I was interviewing college presidents, and one of the college presidents was Beverly Tatum, who is Mary Schmidt Campbell's predecessor as the president of Spelman. And Beverly and I just hit it off, not only in the panel, but afterwards. And she invited me to come see Spelman. And I admit that at that time, I really had limited knowledge and expertise about HBCUs. But really all it took was meeting Beverly, who is just a phenomenal human being, going to Spelman and getting the opportunity. And we actually went for one of their very traditional and historic events they do every year, the holiday concert in Sisters Chapel with the Morehouse men. And just seeing these young people and the sisterhood that was formed at Spelman, and how strong of a support network it was, not only during their college years, but afterwards, during that really critical time when you're developing your career and you need that network, and how strong that network was. So it was also a really popular placement for our KIP women across the country. So we started with Beverly, created scholarships for KIPsters at Spelman. They were phenomenally successful. And so we continued to re-up, and then along came Mary Schmidt Campbell, same kind of quality, extraordinary woman who, has really led Spelman to wonderful places, as did Beverly. And we've continued that investment. So this is a long way around of saying that's how I came to HBCUs, but having had this experience with these great organizations and these great people, I thought, it's actually, my husband and I both thought, it's time to expand that support. And so I went to my longtime friend and colleague, Michael Lomax, who is the head of UNCF, longtime head, and really an icon in the education world. And I said, where else should we go? And he said, I want you to meet somebody. And so he introduced us to Wayne Frederick, the president of Howard. Bruce and I were just blown away with how, again, visionary, impressive. He's a cancer surgeon. He's the president. He, went to college when he was 15. He's just an extraordinary human being. And we asked him, what is your top priority? And what he said really aligns with a lot of what Charles was saying. He said, really, what we want is to motivate STEM scholars here at Howard. We want to attract the best and the brightest in the African-American community across the country. They want to come to Howard. The history, the legacy, the tradition is all here. And we lack only the money, the resources. So it honestly did not take very much to convince us. We were impressed with Howard, with Dr. Frederick, with the program, with the quality of the kids he had already attracted. And we decided to step up and endow that program. honestly not knowing until after we had made our commitment that it was the largest individual gift at the time that Howard had ever received. And it, like our investment at Spelman, has just been an extraordinary opportunity to change lives, because the students in this program are amazing. They are a pipeline to PhD, MD programs beyond. They're going to change the future of healthcare in the African American world. They're leaders in and of themselves. So you're really seeding the next generation of diverse leaders in many disciplines, but particularly in medicine.
Right. And Charles, just bouncing off of what Marcia just said, both of your experiences really sort of highlight how important it is to have that person-to-person connection and engage with people in the HBCU community and not just write a check. I wonder, Charles, if you can speak to the value in that and what you've been able to find.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I went to high school in Atlanta. My dad was in the military, got stationed there. So, but prior to that, I was living all over the world and hadn't seen any black people that owned a business. It's just because I was living on bases in Spain and Germany, different places. So when I got to Atlanta and I saw all these Morehouse men who were running businesses and started meeting, I mean, it's just something I had never seen before. So it certainly changed my perspective on what was possible. I didn't know black people were running businesses that large. And so I think that same thing happens to any young person at that age. If they are around someone who could influence their thinking, kind of paint a broader picture of what's possible, you start to get motivated. Oh, I can do that too. So that's what this is all about. So a lot of the programs I'm involved in are exactly that, trying to connect the students with people who are doing things that are amazing, that look like them as well. Or if they don't look like them, educate them on what's possible. So I think I referenced the Center for Black Entrepreneurship that I helped establish with the Black Economic Alliance on the campus of Morehouse and Spelman. And what that's designed to do is get a lot of the venture capitalists from around the country to show up and share their expertise on how you build a business, what they look for, how do I finance businesses, and how do you recruit the right talent, all of the things that business building skills that they have. That's not obvious to you if you haven't been around that. And so they're going to be participating in this effort. And we've raised about $70 million for that effort. So as the kids come up with ideas, we want a fund there, an evergreen fund, to invest in those ideas and circulate it back into the fund. So both the presidents of Morehouse and Spelman, we used to tell me all the time, they have great ideas that people come up with. They don't know what to do with them. There's nowhere to go. They don't have the relationships because the VCs are all in California. And so you have to have some proximity for things to happen. So we're inviting them to come on campus and not only teach classes, but like I say, invest in the ideas as well. So that has started this month, and we're pretty excited about how that's going. And we're going to see how it goes, get it up and running, and then try to take that to other HBCUs. And more importantly, you don't have to be a student to participate. There will be an online version of this. And so other Black entrepreneurs who want to get in on this, that's the long-term goal. But we thought this was a place to start, Atlanta, because I knew it so well and knew both presidents. And there's a whole history of Black entrepreneurship and businesses to influence people. That was a fertile ground to kind of try this idea. And hopefully we'll see how it goes.
How do you encourage more of your peers, Martha, to do similar, take similar steps that you and Charles are taking? I mean, when we talk about endowments, we can just look at Ivy League schools versus HBCUs, and the gap is huge, right? And so how do you encourage more people like yourselves to take similar actions? What are the conversations that you're having?
Well, it's such a good question, and anybody that knows me knows I'm really tough to quiet on this topic, because I think it starts with really authentic connection. Let's just take HBCUs as an example. I mean, here you have this, what I believe has been a vastly overlooked talent pool for a long time. And I think your mention of, the disparity in endowments is really important. Let's look at that for a second. Howard which is one of the top HBCUs, has the largest endowment of any HBCU, and it's somewhere between $700 and $800 million. And then you look at Yale, predominantly white institution, and their endowment is $30 billion or more. So the fact is, you have some of these HBCUs who have talent just as effective and with as much opportunity, with as much to offer as these predominantly white institutions, but vastly fewer resources. So right there, you can just see that that's a need. And Bruce and I, in our work, are really drawn to need, talent, and opportunity. So I just tell people that disparity, think about it. Think about why that is the case, because it's graduates that are generally the source of endowment. Endowments over the past 20, 30, 40 years have increased enormously because of investment income. But if you didn't have the money to begin with, you couldn't create these huge endowments. And the money that's thrown off by endowments is what provides the resources at these institutions. So it's a place to go to, let's say, correct years of lost opportunity among African Americans who were really closed out of some of these really lucrative areas and really were unable to give back to their universities in the same way. And I think that brings it back to one of the things that Charles said, which is let's look in this new day and age for ways we can change, not just supporting the institutions, which I do think is really important, but also more innovative programs like what he's talking about. And one of those that I had mentioned to you before is this program called Alt Finance, which is the brainchild of Tony Ressler, who runs Ares, also in Atlanta. He lives in Atlanta. And also my husband, who heads Oak Tree Capital, and also Apollo. So three kind of powerhouse organizations that are in the alt investment field. And this program they've developed serves really two goals. One is to increase, their talent pool in that alt investment field, and number two, to find it at HBCUs. So they've teamed up with 4 HBCUs: Howard University, Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, and Spelman. And they've created, along with those 4 HBCUs and with Wharton, what they call a virtual institute, which is this great curriculum in investing, particularly in the alt invest world, which includes entrepreneurship and other just alternative investment strategies. And in addition to that curriculum, which is open to everyone, they've created fellowships. So when it's fully realized, there'll be around 75 fellows each year distributed among those 4 universities. And those fellows will have scholarships, and they'll also have something maybe equally valuable, which is opportunities for internships in the summer at these organizations, at these companies, and mentoring and coaching and networking that maybe they haven't had before. Maybe they didn't know that this was a career path they could follow. So I think it's really going to be a virtuous cycle for both the companies and the students and the HBCUs.
So Martha,
Charles, I'd love to get your take on
those. Yeah, so Tony Ressler is the co-owner of the Hawks with my business partner. So my business partner introduced me to him, and Tony's been helping us at the Center for Black Entrepreneurship as well. So that same group is helping the effort that I talked about earlier, which is brings me to the point, just integrating some of these efforts so we know who's doing what and trying to get some leverage. And so we can leverage what they're doing, the internship programs, because some of those same people will be starting businesses as well. We want them to be participating in the Center for Black Entrepreneurship. And so we're in discussions right now on how to integrate some of that. But I think it's a great effort. And the broader point, though, is we need to expose these students to some of the great industries where wealth is created. And certainly technology is one. So we're doing that on the Center for Entrepreneurship and trying to get those involved. But financial services and Wall Street and alt finance is another that is just something people didn't know about. And so to the extent that they can educate a lot of people, they don't all have to end up working there, but some will. If you want to have wealthy graduates who can give later, they need to be in industries that create wealth. And so I just think it's a great effort. They got it organized really well. I've gone through the details with them. Tony's presenting, gone through all what they set up pretty quickly, very organized as he always is. And so these are the right firms to do that. And like, this is not the secondary, these are the A-class players that are doing this with these HBCUs. So I'm very hopeful and excited about what they're doing.
Absolutely, especially when you talk about intergenerational wealth as well. It's important.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to add to that, Charles. First of all, I've known Tony for 25, 30 years, and he's such an amazing human being. On aside from all of his business success, he's been in this education field longer than we have, and has really been inspirational to us. And what I also see is that when you take three powerhouse organizations like Oaktree, Apollo, and Aries, and some of these top HBCUs they're aligning with, what you do is you set the stage. Not that this is going to be the first, the only thing, but they're leaders and they're first movers, and they're going to show the world what can be done. And so I'm actually really proud of this group for putting this together. They've put 90 million towards this, and their vision is that, assuming success, which I am completely confident will happen, they hope to take this much wider and include far more finance firms and far more HBCUs.
I'd love to get from here, Charles. I'd love to get, we have a question from the audience that I think
no, go ahead.
I'd love to get your take just in these final few minutes we have on this question from the audience, which I think is so important. What are some of the ways to engage HBCU graduates to be able to give back and contribute if they're not able to, if they're not with a firm and able to, contribute in the millions? What are other ways that you both would encourage to really help disrupt the philanthropic system? Charles?
Well, they can use their relationships, even if they can't contribute personally. Introducing the idea of getting their companies engaged with recruiting from these schools is one idea. Secondly, going back to Martha's point earlier on the endowments, one of the reasons the endowments are so small is they didn't have access to these great VCs back in the 80s and 90s when technology was booming. And so all that took was an introduction. I introduced them to, I won't say their name, one of the top ones in the world in technology, who hadn't opened up their fund in 15 years to anybody new, but they decided they would for this. And so just using your relationships to say, can you, talk to the president of Spelman or Howard, and this is what they're after, that will help grow the endowments. Didn't cost anything, but it's just a relationship. So things like that, people may not have means, but they have other ways of helping.
Martha, you got your final take?
Yeah, I'll say that we actually take that head on, because we try to meet with our scholarship students, and we now have hundreds, if not thousands, at various universities. And we meet with them, they're always a little bemused by the fact that somebody who didn't know them was willing to back them. So, and what we always say is, just give back. Our philosophy is influenced by our Jewish heritage, Tikkun Olam, heal the world. And everybody can do their part in whatever way they can give back. They can, as Charles said, they can, mobilize their networks. At Oaktree, you know, I think my voice caused the whole company to form Our Communities Matter and reach out just in the community here in Los Angeles. You can always speak up. You can always talk about ways to make a difference, and that's how it happens.
Absolutely. And I love how both of you talked about authenticity, because that's so important as well for all of us. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Martha, Karsh, Charles, Phillips, thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.